On the topical issue of democratization of AI, and by that we're exploring the concept of creating a foundation for broad intelligence. I'm really pleased about the panel that we've got together for this session because it really is about thinking outside of the box when it comes to AI, and that will become apparent in our next session. But to introduce our moderator for you, please let me welcome Janet Sawari, who's the head of artificial intelligence at UnpackAI, who's going to moderate this session for us. Janet, over to you. Hello.
Hi. Hello, hello, Amsterdam. Good morning. I am Janet Sawari, and I'll be moderating today's panel. And our lovely panelists from all over the world. We have Dr. Larry Heck, just a wave there or a thumbs up. And we have Janet Adams, Chief Operating Officer, SingularityNET. We have Joost van der Burgt, from the Senior Policy Advisor at AI Bank, at an AI bank in the Netherlands. Just a wave somewhere, I can't see you. Nayur should be there in person, and Tara, there you go, and Tara Chklovski. Today's panel discussion is going to be on the democratization of AI, creating a foundation for broad intelligence. I believe that the democratization of AI offers three main benefits. And first and foremost, it introduces or reduces entry barriers for individuals as well as organizations to start experimenting with AI. It also reduces the overall cost of building AI solutions for communities of programmers and those that really are at the entry level that want to extend the data, algorithms, and tools to build more powerful solutions. Today, we're going to discuss why we should democratize and how to democratize. So on that note, I would like to ask Nayur, as QuantumBlack's lead on diversity and inclusion, could you briefly describe your role and how it influences the development of the company's AI DNA or culture? How do you work on that issue of talent and training internally and building that long-term DNA?
Yeah, thank you very much. So for those that are not aware of who QuantumBlack are, let me just do a brief introduction. So QuantumBlack is part of McKinsey. It is the Center of Excellence for Artificial Intelligence within McKinsey. We started our journey many years ago.
I can't hear Nayur's response.
Can you hear me? I think the audience can hear. The audience can hear me. We started our journey many years ago in F1, where we discovered the smart use of data and the smart use of AI and put that together and have material impact on Formula One track times. Recently, you may have seen us in the press where we helped the Emirates team New Zealand use AI in very smart ways to have a substantial advantage and win the America's Cup. But AI is not just about sport, and it's not just about recommending what movie to watch or recommending what music to listen to. It's having an impact on people's lives, and we recognize this, and we want to actually do something about that. So when I talk about impact on people's lives, I'm talking about it's making decisions on who gets a loan, who gets a pay rise, who gets a job application, who gets a promotion, even who gets a vaccine. And so we've seen these kind of consequences on the use of AI. And so one of the questions that we've started to ask a lot, especially at QuantumBlack, and how we work with organizations is, who is actually building that AI? What's their diversity? What's their diversity makeup on actually building that AI? And the reason for this is because we don't want that AI to have unconscious bias inside it. We don't want it to exclude marginalized groups, whether that's gender or whether that's race. And therefore, having a diverse group behind this is just incredibly important. So let me take a few seconds and explain some of the things that we do. When we look at our recruitment and how we hire, we're not looking at one type of institution that we're hiring from. We're looking at a broad spectrum, because what we want to do is attract talent from all over the place. We recognize that those building AI have to come from a diverse background. The second is how we onboard individuals into the organization. Bringing this front and foremost, AI is not just software. it has implications. It can affect individuals' lives. And so the organizations that we work with, we want to ensure that the teams are fully aware of the AI that they're building could have implications and what to look out for. The third is every single month, we run learning sessions, again, bringing this to top of mind of our culture and our DNA. And then when we're working with organizations all around the world on some of the toughest AI challenges, not just sport, but other things, things that affect individuals' lives, we want to make sure that the teams, where possible, are diverse in makeup. So when we're working with organizations and they're trying to work out their talent strategies, we're trying to advise on, look, it's not just about hiring data scientists from certain universities. It's having a mix of different talents and different perspectives, which is going to help you eventually uncover some of the biases or unconscious biases that you may have in your AI. And the reason why I'm saying this, and you probably have seen enough of this already in the press, even big tech gets this wrong. And we've seen the consequences of this over the last few years. So what I'm wanting to bring the perspective here today is diversity is important, especially when we're talking about building AI.
Absolutely. Thank you for that really well thought out response. I think that you made a great point on just highlighting that there have to be certain learning sessions and talent strategies in place to be able to just navigate that whole process and develop that ecosystem for that internal hiring DNA, or just building that culture. It's extremely important. On that note, I would like to pass the baton to Dr. Larry Heck and ask that what types of course structures or learning models do we need in academia to create a broad foundation for intelligence?
Yeah, I just recently left industry and joined university to try to answer that question. One of the things that I've recognized is in a university, we have a role to take on some of the longer term problems, some of the bigger challenges. One of the things I noted in industry, and you see it today, is if you talk to your personal assistant and ask it to, let's say, help me plan my anniversary or help me make a decision on where I should buy my next house, what you're likely to hear is, I don't know how to do that. I'm still learning. And that's a full stop. That's the end of the conversation. What I recognize, and I think a few of us are starting to recognize in the AI community, is that's actually a period of wonderful opportunity for learning for the AI. But we can't just depend on the labs to anticipate every single possible question that people might have, particularly if it's more complex tasks like that. What we really need to do is, in addition to empowering developers inside the labs and developers in third parties with tools and shared code, we need to involve the end user, the customers, in training the AI so that instead of the system saying, I don't know how to do that, yeah, I'm still learning, what it should say is, I don't know how to do that, can you teach me? And so the end user becomes part of this whole ecosystem of training the AI and broadening the AI. This is very much part of the democratization, is to include the end user, and that training of by the user becomes more of a partnership. It's an augmentation. It's augmented AI. And if I'm teaching my personal assistant, I can share that knowledge with all other users around the world. So it sets up a network effect of AI, that this exponential growth starts to happen where we as a community, as a world users of AI, begin to participate in the learning of the AI. So that's what we're doing in the university setting, is working on some of these more challenging problems.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, that's really interesting. And it's just making me think a little bit about a project that Joost described in our last call. And I think the main concern for most people is how do we get the consumers involved in the training of the AI? How do we have this collaborative effort where we also kind of manage the risk around just irresponsible use of data from companies and all of that. So What are your thoughts on that before I just go back to Joost? What do you think are some of
Yeah.
the contingency plans we can put in place from an academia perspective? How do we protect the user?
Yeah, I think on the technical part of that problem, it's really hard to make things simple. And in this case, the end user could be anybody. We need to make the technology much more sophisticated so that the end user finds it very easy, just like having a conversation with a person. With respect to risks, certainly if we start to share the knowledge that we've imbued in our own personal assistant with others, of course, there's privacy concerns. So there's a technology challenge to make sure that, let's say that I've taught my personal assistant how to access my bank account, that privacy is preserved when that knowledge is shared with other users on how to access their bank account. So there's a lot of really hard technical challenges to solve to make this, easy for the everyday user.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that response. Joost, could you just tell me from your position in the finance sector, what are some of the benefits you see for consumers if there's a greater ease to access to their data? And how are surveillance or supervision related to these challenges being addressed? Just compounding on what Dr. Larry just also mentioned.
Yes, thank you. Well, obviously, also from a supervisory perspective, the potential benefits for end users are really strong with the use of AI. We do need to see that being actually put into practice. There's a lot of promises and a lot of interesting perspectives on how this could benefit end users and customers' lives. But in the long run, we do expect to banks, for instance, be able to better project the risk of certain consumers and consumer profiles. And hopefully that will result, for instance, in having lower default rates and less financial stress. So those are the types of benefits that we do see also from a regulatory perspective and that we do stimulate. And conversely, that also brings the task or the responsibility upon ourselves to not fall into that trap or that regulatory reflex of trying to over-regulate the use of AI or to be too strict in trying to deal with all the potential risks that might result from AI. So it's, from a regulatory perspective, it's finding that right balance between providing enough room to reap the benefits of AI, while at the same time, of course, also trying to reduce the risks, and especially the more hazardous risks from a consumer perspective and a society perspective.
Okay. And I understand that you recently worked on a project with the Netherlands bank together with Financiëtsmarkets. All right, I'm really terrible at pronouncing this, but I'm sure you're familiar with the project that I'm referencing in regards to explainable AI. I'd like you to just share some few points on how this project's outcome helped to just bring more light on the conceptual framework and how this framework can be applied to practical use cases in consumer credit, anti-money laundering, and credit risk management, and how that's really important to have explainable AI in the banking sector for the sake of consumers.
Yes, thank you, and that's a good example of what we've just been talking about. If you read a lot of reports on AI, a lot of blogs basically state, in order for us to be able to trust AI, it needs to be explainable. And that sounds really intuitive and also really convincing, especially from a supervisory perspective. But if you really take that to the letter, and if you really interpret that in the strictest way possible, then you basically say that you cannot use 80% of what's out there in terms of AI methods, machine learning techniques, etc. So again, here finding the balance between First of all, by the way, developing that vocabulary together with, in this case, the participating banks, of what we actually mean when we talk about explainable AI. What constitutes a useful explanation, and what type of explanation are we even talking about? So in this project that we did together with a number of Dutch banks, the AFM and Utrecht University, we first try to unpack what is this, what are the relevant aspects of this whole explainability domain. And subsequently, we took these 3 use cases and tried to figure out, given these use cases, and given a number of important stakeholders, so that could be internal stakeholders in the banks themselves, but also us as a supervisory community, the conduct supervisor, the clients, of course. From all these stakeholders' perspectives, what is the type of explanation and the level of explanation that would satisfy their, you could say, justified information needs, or satisfy any concerns that they may have from their stakeholder perspective. And the study was meant as sort of an exploration of this domain, a first step in trying to figure out what we could and should do from a regulatory perspective. And I think the most important conclusion is that it differs a lot. It matters a lot what use case you're talking about and which stakeholder is concerned. And I think it taught us that going forward, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. And we will have to figure out in each and every use case, each and every financial service, what type of explanation and what level of explanation is actually warranted.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. I'm just going to head over to Janet Adams. So I understand that a decentralized AI network is extremely important for the democratization of AI. Could you please explain a little bit more a little bit more of how that actually entails in regards to SingularityNET, considering it's a decentralized AI network? And how is a decentralized AI network different from a centralized one? And what is the ultimate goal?
Great name. Lovely to be here. Thank you so much. It's great to be. Hi to all the World Summit AI team. It's my 3rd year here. Wish I was with you in Holland, but I'm in the US for our annual Artificial General Intelligence conference, which kicks off this weekend in Palo Alto. But hi, Babita, lovely to see you. Hi, DJ Ken. So since I was here in my last couple of appearances, I have moved to work as Chief Operating Officer of SingularityNET. And SingularityNET is the world's leading decentralized AI network and decentralized AI platform. It was founded by Dr. Ben Goertzel, a visionary leader and father of, often cited as being father of artificial general intelligence. And our goal at SingularityNET is to give birth to a new species of artificial general intelligence, bringing about a technological singularity, which is the moment in time when computers are smarter than humans, and bringing that about in a way that is beneficial, benevolent, and inclusive, and provides benefit to all across society, not just to a powerful central group of shareholders or politicians who are controlling the purse strings. So because we view artificial intelligence as being the most powerful technology ever invented, particularly when we move into artificial general intelligence, it's very, very important to us that these technologies are owned by everybody. So we couldn't be closer aligned with the title of this panel if we tried. Our goal is pure democratization of access to AI. So our AI network, anybody can contribute to our AI network. It is completely open to contributors from all over the world, and we do our best to find and inspire a globally motivated mindset, particularly with offices in Ethiopia and with a partnership with Cardano across Africa to bring artificial general intelligence research to Africa. So we see inclusivity as being a authentic, heart-led inclusivity as being a really important principle for the development of artificial general intelligence. As Nayur spoke about at the beginning, it's really important that this AI is developed by people from all walks of society, from all minority groups across the planet, whether they be minority groups based on gender or gender identification, or on sexuality, on race, on age, on minority, on level of ability. The whole beautiful diversity of humankind needs to be both reflected in the generation of our artificial intelligence, but also importantly in the impact and the positive impact of our artificial intelligence, particularly as we move forward to this singularity moment. And so decentralized, we're determined that the singularity will not be centralized, that the benefit of the singularity and artificial intelligence will be equally shared, leading to much greater distribution of wealth, much greater distribution of power, of assets, of resources of all kinds across the planet, and really taking mankind forward to the next stage of our evolution, where we're working with our AI counterparts, but where we are awakened to the possibilities of living with super intelligences and of ensuring that every single person on our planet thrives and benefits.
Absolutely. I love that vision, and it's amazing that we actually have a panelist who is already doing that, who's bringing a new wave of access to education for all minority groups and walks of life. You know, bringing that level of ability to students. And yeah, so we have Tara from Technovation, and I understand that you apply an innovative model that brings together teams of students, their families, and mentors from different professional backgrounds to tackle real-world problems with AI. And could you tell us about the role that this type of social networking or model plays in developing girls' technology entrepreneurship skills as compared to self-directed learning platforms and initiatives? All right. I think Tara's mic is muted and we cannot hear her. So we still have another.
Oh, there we go.
Hello?
Oh,
Oh, there we
hey.
go.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry about that. So yes, thank you for having me on the panel, and it's really cool to hear such a diverse set of perspectives on an important problem. And so we run the world's largest technology education program. It's a competition, and what we found was that it's very powerful to challenge or set forth a problem to young people to say, find something in your world, in your community, and here are tools by which you can tackle them. 15 years ago, it was mobile technologies, and now it's AI. And it's been mind blowing to see the curiosity, the interest that people across hundreds of countries, different backgrounds have to learn about how AI works, but also more importantly, how they can contribute to these new technologies. And a very important part that helps them break this mindset of maybe this is not for me is having a network of mentors where a human being is telling you that your perspective is important. We're going to work together to make technology better. So just a quick background on how Technovation works. It's a 3-month competition. Teams of girls age 10 to 18 work with mentors. And the past 2 years, it has been virtual mentoring. We have roughly 6,000 to 7,000 mentors who team up with 25,000 girls around the world, 100 plus countries. and they develop AI-based solutions for the problems they are facing. So some problems are around, say, climate change, food security, better access, and the Sustainable Development Goals that we are all working towards, making sure that we are having a healthy planet as well as sustainable societies. So what we have found is people are core to innovation, and making sure that in addition to the technology tools, we need to make sure that mentors are a thick layer of support for young people, making so that we have a diverse set of voices and perspectives in the next set of technologies.
Wow, thank you. Thank you, Tara. I think we're coming to the end of our panel. Thank you so much to all the amazing panelists for joining in. I think this has been extremely insightful. I will try by all means to reel all these thoughts together with an afterthought or an article or something, and then publish it on maybe LinkedIn, or I think that would be helpful since we have such a short amount of time. I am not quite sure if we still have enough time for Q&A. But yes, if there are any questions, I think we're more than ready to take them on.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to open up questions to the floor here. Any questions for what you've heard so far? Please raise your hands. If you'd like to say, gentlemen here at the front, we've got a mic to you. Anybody else, please do that and we'll come to you after. 2 questions coming up.
Hi.
Try again.
Yep.
Roving microphone sound.
All right, test. All right, we're good. Hi, I'm Joaquin. I'm from Erasmus Tech Consulting. And as I was walking in, I heard you mention AI's applications in F1. And as someone who watches that, I mean, I try to. I was just wondering if you could expand a little bit on that, you know, some more detail. I was interested.
What's the detail that you're after?
Like specific applications and like the impact essentially on a race weekend, if you could expand on that.
Thank you.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can give you 30 seconds on this. So if you think about the investment that many organizations, F1 organizations make on the R&D pipeline, like which are the ones that actually going to have material impact on track time? Which are the things that they're going to be building the year before is actually going to have an impact on track time? That's one. The other is on the driver and the driver's performance and measuring that in real time, but also giving real-time feedback to the driver, when to make moves, when not to make moves, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of hidden AI that's happening behind the scenes.
It's fascinating. Yeah.
And also in other sports as well. Like, even though we don't just do sports, I just want to make that clear. It's quite cool.
Awesome, thank you. I hope that's helped. Gentleman over there, hi.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stefan German, Fondation Bodnar. My question is related to democratization of AI in the context of human rights. 2 years ago, Philip Alston, the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and Extreme Poverty, put a report to the UN General Assembly, basically seriously questioning whether big tech and governments are operating in a human rights-free zone, and that we are stumbling zombie-like into a digital welfare dystopia, was the warning of him. Isn't it time that we really should have, from ideation to R&D to deployment of any AI solution, a full impact assessment on human rights implications end to end?
Full assessment of human rights implications when we're thinking about AI. If you'd like to take that question, panelists, please just raise your hand so I can just see that, because we're running out of time. Yes, go ahead.
I think in our work, we see girls all around the world tackle a very, very sensitive, high-stake decision. And what we have found is that the UN Sustainable Development Goals are grounded in the human rights, especially the Human Rights Declaration. There's quite a bit of, there are quite a few frameworks that I think it's now up to education organizations to make sure that we are teaching young people how to think about these highly complex systems, which are also high stakes decisions. And I think there's a bit of a gap, because we tend to teach technical skills, and we maybe have some sort of capstone projects about social problems, but not the two interconnected. And I think there's room here for education organizations to work with experts, especially academia, to try to build curriculum that is real-world problem oriented, but then also has the human rights and the sustainable development goals deeply ingrained in them.
Thank you. And just one final quick question, very briefly if we can. Does the diversity you speak of mainly focus on personnel or on data?
So I think this question was meant for Dr. Larry. I also received this question online.
Could you repeat the question? It kind of dropped out for a second.
Okay. Does the diversity mainly focus on personnel or data?
Yeah, so I think from a perspective of democratization, which we're talking about here, a lot of the focus in the past has been just on the data. And that's appropriate because a lot of the innovations are coming from data. But I think that empowering the users so that they're very much a part of this democratization effort is probably more important. And all the things that we're talking about, so that this is not a separate AI that's built in the lab just based on data. It's a partnership, that it's an augmentation, empowerment of end user when they use AI in this partnership. One of the things about, the good things I suppose, about data and bias in data is at least it's relatively straightforward to fix that bias. And there's a lot of progress being made, I think, to address those issues in the data. But like I said, I think probably the most effective is, have the users be in control and part of this development of the AI intelligence.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there, I'm afraid, because we've run out of time. But to Nayur, to Larry, to Joost, to Janet and Janet, thank you so much for that fascinating discussion. Please give them a warm round of applause. Thank you. Thanks, gentlemen.